I will spend more and more time on reviews. So it's just to make sure that we are on the same page before we talk about new things, which is built on top of the thing we talked about the previous weeks. Okay. So let's look at what we learned last week. We had a basic understanding of classes from the beginning of this semester. We had a understanding of the concept of a class, right? And now we last week we went into the detailed implementation and the structure of the implementation of the class. We talked about each of the class will have a list of variables, a set of functions, right? We talked about how to group the code into header file, which is where you have your interface. In the interface, what do people normally use the interface for? What does your compiler leverage the interface for? And we also show you a complete implementation of the corresponding functions of a class student, right? So everything last week, we used this one example student. We started very simple. We started doing modification. We talked about public, private. We're going to talk about protected later on. Everything was built around student, right? So this week, we're going to have another example for another class. And same as before, everything that we cover today will be built on top of this class. So our class is called account. For this class, we have some goals, right? For us to have this account class, I want each account to have its username and an account balance. That sounds pretty similar to our project one, right? In addition, I want this account to be able to add balance to it and spend balance from it. Okay. So that for us to get that, this is what we're going to have for our account. So look at this example. Again, let's do some review of what a interface contains, right? So this is the interface of our class account. This is the header file of the account class. So you see that the file name would be account with capital A .h, right? Because this is a header file, so account.h. We want to have some safeguard on the definition of account, right? So we always will have, if not defined, account H, define account H at the very end, and if, right? In between are our code. We have our include statement because we'll be using string, different places in here using string, so I want to include that. Always have using namespace std so that the thing we are defining, the class account, will be defined inside std. Okay. Now here's our actual interface, name class account. So we have account name and account balance. By default, they should be private. Let's keep them private. We don't want people to just, go and modify account name or change people's account balance. So we don't want to open it up. So we'll keep it private. So this is where we have 16 and 17 will have account name and account balance for each account. All right. Now, if you go down to the public functions, here are our functions, member function of the class account. We then have setter for name, gather for name, gather for balance, and then our two behavior functions, right? So the first three are setter and gathers, basically. This allow me to change the name. This allow me to read the name, right? So write access, read access, we don't have a function for us to change the balance. I don't want you just simply go in and override balance or anyone to override balance. So I only give people read access to balance, so gather for balance. For one to actually modify functions, we want them to do that through our two behavior functions. One is adding to the balance. The other one is spending from the balance, right? So those are our function. One is add to account balance. The other one is spend from account balance. Both of them takes in parameter. This is how much you want to add. This is how much you want to spend, right? Make sense? Right, so that's our basic setup of our class account. Now, on the top right, gonna give you a copy of what we just went over, the interface of this class account. Here's our definition of our setters and getter, right? For this class, I want it to be very, very simple. Is that the setter, I simply wanted to change an account name. I'm gonna add more logic later, but for now it's one line. I'm just, again, gonna give people who trigger this function write access to name. So you see here's my parameter account name. I'm gonna read that in as a parameter, assign it to the member variable of account class name, right? Similarly down here, the read access, the getter, where I am defining the get name simply as returning the name variable of account class. All right, pretty straightforward. Yes, so mutators are setter, accessors are getter. That's right, yes. All right. Now we have our first function, first two setter and getters for name. Similarly, the get account, right? The same. I'm just going to return the account balance of class account. That will be my simple getter. Here's our two behavior functions. One is add balance, one is spend balance. Add balance takes in the parameter of how much we want to add. Simply add that amount to my account balance, right? My account balance is private, but because this is a function of account, I can modify it. Right? Remember private? Private is where only the account class can have access to the variables. So within this account class, I'm under account at balance, I can change my own variables, yes. Similarly down here for spend balance, I take in the float as a parameter to tell me how much you want to spend. Here's a little bit more logic here just to make sure that we don't spend over what we already have in the account balance. So there's a check to see how much you have left versus how much you want to spend. Only when you want to spend less than your account balance, we will do the deduction, right? So we'll subtract the spend balance from the account balance. Otherwise, we're going to print out there's not enough balance for you to spend. The current balance is this variable. Okay. Now here's the full screenshot of the definition. So this file will be account with capital A.c++. You will remember to include account.h, right? Because you're defining account class. Where is account class? It's from here. So make sure you include account.h and include whatever library you're going to use. Make sure it's in the same namespace, right? We're defining account class in std namespace. And here's a full copy of the account. All right. So you can go home and implement and try to run them. Now we have finished all our declaration and definition of account class. Let's look at the main. In main, will be very simple. Now we have a full definition of account class. We can then just include account.h to use it. Line 7 is where I'm creating a variable. I call it ACCT of type account, meaning that ACCT, this variable, short for account, should have set name, should have get name, should have get balance, add balance, spend balance, right? Everything that we have defined or declared in here. As long as you have account dot, right? Use the dot operator to access functions and variables from your object. So this is an object. This is the type that we just defined, right? Class account, object account, and this is triggering function from this object. Triggering function from this object. Okay? All right, so if we look at the account balance that we have, right? Let's go back. Let's see. I have it here. Let's look at this one. If you look at the account balance that we have a float, right? That's a float. Inside my add balance and spend balance, we are adding to the account balance and we are subtracting from the account balance without initializing account balance to be 0. This actually caused a lot of people's project one to fail, is that you forgot to initialize before you add to it or before you subtract from it. If we don't do that, look at here, your initialized value could be very, very random, right? It could be different, depends on which computer run this software. It could even be different, depends on when you run this program at your computer. That number could change from time to time. So that won't work for us, right? We want to initialize it to 0. How do we do that, all right? So if you look at the slides, I'm asking you to actually do a little bit more. For the previous example, we want to initialize to 0. But we sometimes want to initialize it to more than 0. Depends on the type of the count that we have. So this is where we're building up, okay? So some accounts we have, we want to initialize them to 0. Actually, most of the accounts that we have, we want them to have a 0 balance. However, some of the VIP accounts, we want them to have initial balance of 100. Some VIP Plus accounts, they will have initial balance of 1,000. Okay. Now, how do we get that, right? How do we change the initial balance of some accounts versus some other accounts based on their type? Can we have another setter function to just change it, right? So we could have a setter function added to allow us to set the balance amount. So here I have added a setter function for balance, gonna take in a parameter to look at how much initial balance you want to set for this account. This should be a public function, otherwise, the main or other function cannot trigger it. However, because this is a public function, I will be able to do something like this. I have an account. I'm gonna set the name to Deckard. I can set the balance to 100. Okay. And then the account will have a balance 100. And this is a regular account. I haven't, this is not like a VIP or VIP plus. Similarly down here, when I have account 2, which is another object, right? ACCT2, this is just another name. I name it. You can name it whatever you want. This object, I can set name King, and I can set the balance 1,000, meaning that as long as I have this set balance function, I can set it to whatever I want, right? I can set it to 1,000, even when it's a regular account. I don't need to care about, this is a VIP plus or VIP, because this function is completely public. So anyone can trigger it, anyone can set your account balance. That does not sound very safe. Okay, so how can we fix it? When we create an object from class account, right? Like this one, we have an object ACCT, we have another object ACCT2. Those are two objects we have created from account. We want that to be the time where people set their name and balance, okay? And we want that to be the only time people set their name and balance. Okay, so you remember the setter function? It's a function. You can trigger whenever you want. You can trigger it at the time you create ACCT or ACCT2, or you can trigger it later. Whenever you want, you can change it. But I don't want that. I don't want to allow that. I want the initial balance and the initial, the name to be initialized only at the time you create an object. Okay, and we don't want that to be able to set any other time. Okay, for any other time, if you want to change a balance, you could either trigger the add balance to add funds to it or spend balance to spend from it, right? I don't want you to just be able to cause that balance to just override it anytime you want. That's not safe. So I want the behavior where only at the time an object is created, like ACCT or ACCT2, that you can set name and balance. And that is the only time you can set name and balance. And that's also when we want to initialize them, right? Initialize means that you do it once, you do that at the very beginning. So we want to initialize or allow people to initialize their name and balance. This is where we introduce something called constructor. Constructor is very similar to a function. But to distinguish it from any other function, constructor of a class always has the same name as the class name. Because constructor is used for you to initialize your object, therefore it does not return anything, right? You use it to set or initialize your name, your balance, your other things. You don't need to return anything. Therefore, constructor does not have a return type. Constructor is automatically triggered when you are creating or instantiate an object. So when we say, oh, we're creating an object ACCT, we have another object ACCT2, those are all called instantiate, right? We are creating an object from our class. That's when we call a class is instantiated. A constructor is then used to instantiate the class instant and initialize all values of, or whatever value you want to initialize of your class. Here are our example. This is our class account, right? And then before, this is the before, we had two setters, set name and set balance, which is a public function people can trigger whenever they want. We don't like that. But we want people to be able to initialize name and balance, but not set it anytime they want. So I'm going to remove those two functions. So we're going to not use the setters anymore. Instead, we're going to have a constructor, which will automatically be triggered at the time you create an object. So here's a constructor. A constructor has no return type. Okay, so no return. Same name as the class name. Okay, so this function is just called count with capital A. Because this is a function that you use to initialize your variables, so you will have a lot of parameters you take in, right? What name you want us to initialize the name to be, and what initial balance you want us to assign. So yes, you will take in parameter to tell your class what are the initial values you want your members to have. Okay, so remove those two functions, added one constructor. Let's look at our definition of the constructor. So here's what we change in our header file, right? No setter anymore. One constructor at line 21 that takes in account name and initial balance. Down here is our definition of constructor. Again, no return type, so no return type here. Account, which is the constructor, belongs to the class account. So make sure you still have that, right? Account, column. Account, that's the function name, also the constructor name. Then your parameters, right? The account name and the initial balance. Initial account name and initial balance. Now here's our constructor where you simply take your parameter and assign the value to your member variables. Account name equals to this parameter. Account balance equals to this parameter. And that's it. Okay? So once you have that, here's our new main. Remember back in the previous example, we had set name Deckard, set balance 100, set name King, set balance 1000 for account and account 2. This is our new main. Because we have a constructor for our class account, we can then have account, ACCT is our name, parentheses, the parameter you want to pass to the constructor. Okay, what this is saying is that I'm creating an object, ACCT, of type account, Because at the time I create this, you will be triggering constructor. Here are the parameters I will be passing in to the constructor. So line 7 will be able to do the old 7a and 9 all together. Line 10 will be able to finish line 12, 13, and 14 from the old example. Okay, any question? In constructor's header file, do we need to do if not defined, define? It's the same header file. Okay, it's the same header file. It's not a different header file. It's the same header file that you had with if not defined, define on the top. I have just added one line, 21, inside the declaration of class account. It's the same file. Okay. Why do you not have to do account? Okay. So that is because account, it's a type. You still need a name for your object. Okay. So this is the name of the object. I'm naming this object account. I'm naming this object account 2. So you still need to have the name. And then you have the constructor automatically be triggered the minute you create this variable with this name. Therefore, the parentheses go after the name. So you're not doing a function call because you don't call constructor. It doesn't happen. You create an object. That time when you create an object, constructor will be automatically triggered. And it will ask you for parameters. So those are the parameters. So you can think of that as combining all those three together. So you're not explicitly doing function call. Yes. So the question is, as long as you have a constructor like this, it will automatically be triggered. Yes. So a constructor is always a function-like definition with no return type and the same name as the class. As long as you have that, that's a constructor that will be automatically picked up by your compiler to do it. Yes, you don't need to trigger it. You actually cannot trigger it. The way you trigger it is you do this. You create an account, call ACCT. That is when it will be triggered automatically. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go back to our previous goal of this adding on to the account class is that most of our accounts should have initial balance of 0. Only VIP and VIP plus accounts should have different initial values, right? So can we have, because most of the accounts are not VIP or VIP plus, most of the accounts are regular accounts. Can we have default value set to our constructor, which is the same default value for the parameter you learned 3 weeks ago at functions? Remember default value? Where you can have something like this, okay? Initial balance by default is 0, 0.0, right? Because it's a float. Only when we want to override it, we can override it into 100 or we can override it into 1,000. So this is having default value for the parameter of a constructor. This is also really, really common. Most of constructors, they have parameters with default value. Okay. About default value, when you are defining your constructor or actually any functions in your class with default value, it has to be in the header file. Okay, so you see that this is under the declaration, right? The public is here, that's the constructor, that's the function name. This is where you do default value. You do not do default value in your source file, okay? You do it at the time you declare your constructor or any other functions. Okay, so just a note. Once you have that, your C++ file does not need to change. Okay, so your source file stays the same. All right, with that, this is my new main. I'm going to have 3 accounts, account 1 and account 2. My first account, ACCT, has name Leah, and I'm only passing 1 parameter without the second parameter, meaning that the account balance for Leah will be 0, right? Versus here, my account 1 named Deckard, I'm overriding the 0 account balance to be 100, so my initial balance is 100. And finally, we have King, overriding it to be 1,000. Okay? I see a question. We have not talked about stack or heap or anything in this class, so don't need to worry about it. All right. Now, something I want to know, this is what you probably will be going in, run into in your project assignments. It's array. We have been very comfortable with arrays. You have been using arrays for, different projects. From C as well, you have been using arrays over there. Now we have class. The way that you define array in a class is the same as you define it in your main function, only when you have a size. Okay. Whenever you want to define an array with unlimited size or non-fixed size, okay, this is called, in a class, going to be called flexible array, right? Because you could put as many variables you want in there. It doesn't have to be like a size 5 or size 10. It's flexible. You can put more than 10 in there. You can put 20 and 50 in there. So the size of this array is flexible. This is called flexible array member. Okay, so because it's a class member. So flexible array member. When you are creating or when you have flexible array member of a class, you can only define it at the very end of your variable list. So you can have many, many variables up here, they're private or public. The very last variable you have can be flexible array member. Okay, reason being that the compiler does not know how much memory to allocate for this flexible array. Therefore, it has to stay at last so that it will not step into or override other variables' memory. Okay? All right. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if you don't want to use flexible array member, that's fine. You can use pointer, right? We also are very familiar with pointer, have been using that in C and early on in C++. If you want to use pointer, then you don't have to follow the rule that, the pointer has to be, a flexible. But because you are using pointer as a member of a class, you actually need to manually delete that pointer. For example, over here, okay, where you have a pointer, which is an array, okay, and down here, I'm going to have array size and then the array contents, right, the actual array that you want to pass in. Then you're going to assign this parameter array size to our member array size. Before you assign the parameter array that you're passing in into the class member array, you need to have something like 17, where you're telling your compiler that, hey, I'm using an array, it's a pointer, yes. I am going to allocate, using new, this amount of memory location for my array. Okay? Remember when you need to use pointer, you have to do new int size. The minute you do new in a class, you need to do delete. Okay? So this is when you choose to use the pointer. So for those of you who choose to use pointer, first of all, you need to use new, and you also need to do delete. For us to look at that, we will talk about how and when to do delete. Now, before we do that, let's just summarize the constructor versus setter. Setter functions allow anyone to set any value to the attributes at any time. It gives so much flexibility and it's completely public. Anyone can set it, override it, and change it whenever they want. Constructor is very, very limited. Okay, constructor, the reason I'm sorry, hold on. Ruby. All right. Where were we? Okay, so constructor, it's very, very limited. You only allow one to set value and only initial value for an object when you create it. Okay, so it has a specific time, specific purpose, and a specific behavior because it's automatically triggered. So you don't get to like call it whenever you want. So for constructor, you will have the parameters that you use to set all the initial values of this class automatically be triggered at the time you create an object, and it will only be triggered once because it's automatic and only at the time you create an object, so only be triggered once. Okay? All right. Let's look at something called Destructor. So we're just looking at a pointer where if you create a pointer, you have to use new to create a location for this pointer. Therefore, you have to delete it. Otherwise, it's memory leak. Remember memory leak we talked about for C++, where you're creating and allocating memory repeatedly without freeing it up, without deleting it. And then the longer you run your program, the more memory it's going to take from people's computer. At some point, you're going to kill people's computer because you have, used all their memory. So Destructor, it's another very special function for you to do cleanup. So Destructor is what you use to destroy an instance. Okay, so when we create an object, right, we will have memory location for it. We'll create values for the member variables and all those. When the object is done, right, either when we finish using the object, when we have a loop that will create an object in there, and then the loop is done, right? So that's where we call out of loop. When your program is finished, when your function is finished, whenever those happen, the object that you create, whatever you created, we should remove it, right? It's out of scope. It's done. It should not exist anymore. That is when Destructor will be triggered, because for a class, your compiler is relying on you to tell it how to clean up, right? I created an object of account for you, right? You asked me to create 10 of them, say. You created 10 of them. Now you finish the loop. What I'm going to do, like compiler is waiting for you to tell how to clean up those 10 objects that you created. So Destructor is a special function that also doesn't return anything because all that it's doing is deleting things, right? You should delete, clean up, free up memory, and so on. So deleting. It also does not take any parameter. Unlike Constructor, where you are setting initial value for your object, you take some parameter, right? You take the parameter of what value you want me to set, and so on. Where Destructor, all you're doing is deleting, and deleting. You should not need any parameters to help you to delete, right? You should not need to take any input to help you delete. Destructor also has the same name as the class name, just with a tilde at the front. So we'll show an example for that. If we do not write our own destructor for our class, compiler will create a default constructor for us that's just empty. Okay. Default constructor will delete local attributes owned by the class. So local attributes like integer, float, those will just automatically destroy. You don't need special code for it. But it will not run any like delete function to release memory, meaning that your pointer is not going to be deleted. You have to write delete for your pointer. And like, I think like other data structure you're going to learn in the future, you also will need to learn how to delete them. But pointer is the one that you have learned and you have been using. That is the thing that you need to manually delete. Okay. So let's look at why. So what's the difference between local attributes versus pointer? Okay. So local attributes are integer like float, your object string, or your char. When your compiler is done with your variable, right? It's going to try to free up as fast as it can. It's not going to just leave you and be like, okay, you figure it out, bye. It's not going to do that. It will still try its best to delete for you. So it will delete anything that you have defined in your kind of class variable. So integer, float, string, yes, they will be deleted. They will be gone. It'll be fine. Now you have a pointer. Okay, remember what's a pointer? Pointer is a variable that holds a memory address, right? And what it will do if you don't have a destructor is that it will also remove that variable, which is a pointer, which holds the memory address of maybe 10 other variables you have pointing to. Okay. So if it let you decide to, oh, I'm just going to delete this pointer, you will lose the address, meaning that you will not know where the other 10 variables you were pointing to at because you lose the address of your pointer. So for Destructor is that before we delete any of those things that have you lose contact of your pointer location, I want you to run delete first. So here's an example. First of all, what Destructor look like? For our count, it will be a count with a tilde at front, no parameters. Okay, empty parameter list because it's supposed to delete things. You don't need parameter for help to help you delete. Okay, so that's what a destructor looks like. Very simple. For the people who do not want to use pointer and do not feel comfortable using delete, right? Your destructor can just be simple as a print statement. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. I don't have any pointers in here, right? This is our account class. It just have two local variable, which will be automatically deleted. I do not have any pointer. My destructor, I just have a simple print. This is when I'm gonna show you how destructors are triggered. Remember before we said that if you don't manually create a destructor like this, your compiler will automatically give you a destructor that would not have any print statement, but it will just delete your name and your account balance automatically, right? Because it's local variable, it can handle that. All right, so this is my destructor. In here, I'm just going to put a print statement saying that the account with the name is destroyed. Okay, so a simple print. Now let's look at our main. Here's our main, same main as before. We have account Leah. We have account Deckard with $100. We have account King with $1,000 through constructor, right? Constructor, constructor, constructor. Then line 16, I print out reached end of the program. Line 17, return 0. So what's going to happen at line 17 is that it will try to delete everything we have here and finish the program and free up the memory, right? So if you look at this print statement down here, we have the account Leah has account balance 0. That's all good. Account Decker has balance 100. Account King has balance 1,000. Reached end of the program, right? And then I have 3 more print statements. The first print statement that automatically be triggered is account King is destroyed. Okay? The reason that it's King is because Destructor runs in the reverse order of the object creation. So Leah was the first one created. Deckard is the second one that's created. King is the last one that's created. When we reach end of the program, when your compiler is trying to trigger Destructor and remove everything, okay, it's going to go backward. King got destroyed first. Then Deckard got destroyed. And finally, Leah got destroyed. Okay? Question on Destructor? Now, for the people who wants to use pointers, here's a complete example of a pointer. So you have a pointer, right? Int pointer array, ARR, all right? And then you're going to do your thing. You're going to create your new array. You're going to assign variable and value to it. You can do whatever logic you want. In the destructor, you have to run a delete. Otherwise, this is going to cause memory leak. You have to run delete array account ARR for your pointer. Okay. I'm not gonna ask you. Not gonna be any project assignment. I will not be like you use pointer to do. I'm not gonna ask you to do that. But I do find some of the people feel more comfortable with pointers comparing to flexible array. But when people use pointer, a lot of them will forget to delete. So here's for the people who choose to use pointer. You have to have delete. Otherwise, if I run your code many times, my computer will tell me out of memory. Okay? All right, so that's constructor and destructor for initializing and destroying your object. Okay? Here we want to then talk about this new concept, friends. Okay, this is built on top of our class account as well, where remember we talked about account status. If account is regular account, it should have $0 as account balance. If the account status is VIP, I want it to be 100. If the account status is VIP plus, I want it to be 1,000. Okay, so here we add this new variable account status into my class account. Again, private. We don't want that just anyone can be able to override it. So private. Now, instead of having people write what balance they want, we're going to now instead ask them what status the account is. And because most of the accounts are regular accounts, so I have a default value, regular. So this is a complete copy of the header file now. Okay, so remember we asked whether there's if not define. Yes, it's the same file. So yes, you have if not define, and if at the end, you have your include statement using namespace std. Your full interface of class account, it is longer now, right? We have added constructor, destructor, added another variable account status, two parameter for account initializing account name and account status. Our getters, I've added a get for status, right? So I have a get name, get balance, get status, so that I allow people to read. I don't allow them to write anymore, right? No setters, only getters. Getters allow people to read. So I still want them to be able to know what the account name is, know what the account balance or know what the account status. So I give everyone read access. This is my getter. And then my regular as balance is spend balance. All right. With this, we need to go back and update our account. Instead of having the dollar amount, we're going to have a string status. And then in my constructor, I will have some logic to initialize account balance, right? So name, very simple. Take the parameter account name, assign it to member variable of account. Take the parameter status and assign it to the member variable of account as well. Okay, so those are pretty simple. Here's some logic for us to determine what's the account balance, right? So you can look at account status equals VIP plus, then account balance should be 1,000. If it's equals to VIP, account balance should be 100, and otherwise, account balance should be 0. Okay. Same destructor at the very end where we have just a print statement just to show you that how they're triggered and when they're triggered. Okay, so no logic in there because I don't have any pointers created here. One thing I want to do for this class is I want to have the behavior or the capability of syncing two accounts. So for our previous main, we had 3 accounts, right? Leah, King, and Deckard. We have regular, we have VIP, we have VIP plus. Now I want to have a function called sync accounts that if you have two accounts that are families, for example, and one of them has higher status than the other, and when you call sync, I want you to level up the lower account status to match the highest of the two. Okay, so for example, if we have account 1 and account 2, account 1 is VIP plus, account 2 is VIP. When I sync them, they should now both be VIP plus. Okay, so it's like a family account, right? If you're added to a family plan, you all level up to, the same status. So that function is called sync account. This is what my sync accounts will look like, right? This is a function void, okay? And then I'm gonna call it sync, capital A, accounts, sync accounts. Takes in two parameter, account A and account B, both of type account. All right. Some print statement at line 8 where I'm gonna print out linking accounts, this name to that name. And here's my logic. Line 9 is checking if one of them is VIP plus, right? If account A.get status is VIP plus or account B.get status is VIP plus. Inside this if statement, I want to set both to be VIP plus. Okay. Line 12, else if, right? Else if means that if this is not true, what's going to happen now? Here, else if we say, if one of the account is VIP, right? If account A.get status is VIP or account B.get status is VIP, we want to then set both accounts to be VIP. At the very end, I'm going to print out accounts linked. All right? So that's what I want to do. I have two if. The first if statement is if one of them is VIP plus, set both to be VIP plus. The second is if one of them is VIP, set both of them to be VIP. All right. Now, if you recall, for our class account, our status are private, meaning that I can read the account, I can read the status, yes, right? I can get the status and compare it to see whether it's VIP or VIP plus. But for a function like this, which is just a regular function, it does not have permission to set the account, right? So here, the reason I didn't put a code in there because I really cannot. I cannot put in set status. First of all, I don't have that function. I also cannot change or overwrite my status of an account. Okay. So how do I do this? I still want to have this sync account function. I still want this sync account function to be able to modify and change my account status. Here's when we introduce friend. A class can have friend functions and friend classes. Okay. Friend functions and friend classes have access to all class members. Okay. All class members, no matter whether it's private or protected or public, right? Public is everyone have access to it. But for a friend, right, either it's a function or a class, a friend have access to everything the class owns. Okay? Because friend is so powerful, friendship needs to be granted, meaning that for class B to be a friend of class A need to give that friendship. Okay? And class A need to declare it inside itself. So saying that you can only give out friendship, right? So if people want to access everything inside me as a class, I have to declare the friendship because you're trying to access everything I have, right? Private member, private function. So inside class A, need to declare I am giving you access. I'm giving you friendship so that you can access everything I have. Friendship is not symmetric. Okay. Class A declaring friendship to class B does not mean that A all of a sudden have access to everything that B has. Okay. It only goes one way, not symmetric. Not transitive either, right? If A give friends to B, B give friends to C, A does not mean that's, giving friends to C. Okay. It does not go that way. So every single friendship has to be declared very, very specifically. Okay, so let's look at an example. Remember our sync accounts function? That is a function we do want to give access to, right? Because I want to allow it to set my status because it will sync them. For me to give friendship to sync accounts, the class account has to be declared inside the interface. So line 15 is what we add. Friend, this function. So the function has to be complete, right? The return type, function name, function parameter. So everything so that compiler can know which function you're giving the friendship to. You just put a friend at the front and you include that inside your class interface. Now that I have added line 15 to my class account, I can then do something like this. Now I can fill in my function where account A dot account status equals to VIP plus, account B dot account status equals to VIP plus, or down here as well, right? Account A dot status equals to VIP, account B dot status equals to VIP. This is only possible because sync accounts is a friend of class account only because of line 15. If I remove line 15, this will error out. My code will not be able to compile at all. Okay? All right. Now here's our main.c++. So people have asked me, well, now we have header file, source file. Where do I put the regular function? You still put them in the main.c++. Okay, so this is my main, right? It's say in main.c++, and on the top is my function declaration, function definition. You will just stay there. That's completely fine. Okay. So my sync account is up here. It's void. It takes into account A and B. Check the logic. Set accounts, right? With no arrow, right? So there's no like red lines underneath. Now run our main. Okay. So on the top right is our print statement, and the arrow is telling us which line we are at. So now we're at line 29. So all of those are done. We have Leah, Deckard, King, all three accounts created. And then Leah is a regular account, Deckard is a VIP account, King is a VIP plus account. Okay. Let's go to line 31, sync accounts. Once we go to line 31, sync accounts, it's going to jump to line 8, right? Find the sync accounts, jump to line 8. Where we're going to print out link accounts. So link accounts Leah to Deckard. All right. We're going to run the if and check whether any of Leah or Deckard are VIP plus. Nope. Right. Neither of them are VIP plus. Jump to line 14. Check whether one of them is VIP. Yes, Deckard is VIP. Line 16 and 17 to overwrite account A dot account status and account B dot account status. Okay, so this is overwriting those. Now both of them have VIP. Print out accounts linked. Okay. Now So let's go back here. So now we're at the end of function sync accounts, right? Within here, we have two copy. Remember pass by value is creating a copy. We have two copied created, account A and account B, right? Account A is a copy of Leah. Account B is a copy of Deckard, right? From 31, right? So both of them have their copy created, and then we change their status of the copy. Once we jump out of this back to 32, account A and account B are destroyed. Therefore, remember our destructor? Destructor got triggered. Your terminal will have those two extra lines where account Decker is destroyed, account Leah is destroyed. This is because account A and account B, which is a copy of Leah and Deckard, are destroyed at the end of the sync accounts function. Does that make sense? Why do we have those two lines? All right. So after 31, when we jump to 32 and check account 0 status and account 1 status, they remain unchanged, right? Because we passed in by value. When you pass in by value, gonna create a copy, right, for Decker and Leah. Yes, you modify them in here, you change them however you want. The minute you jump to 20, it's gone. Nothing is preserved. You did not change the actual variable here. You change the copies in here. That is also why the destructor got triggered the minute you jump out. Okay, so if we keep running it, it's the same thing. You're going to go in, you're going to create two copies. You're going to run this and change the status. Jump out, two destructor got triggered. Nothing changed for Decker and King in main. Right? Once we finish the function, destructor will get triggered again from main. Right? From main, remember, it has to go backward. So King got destroyed first, Decker got destroyed second, Leah got destroyed last. Right? It has to go backward. So how do we fix this? Pass by reference. Right? So all I'm going to change is that this function will take into parameter by reference. Therefore, make sure you go back to the friend declaration inside class account, because that will also need to refer to the right function with the right parameter. So that will also need to take into reference of variables, not to pass by value variables. Okay. So friend also need to match. That is also changed. Now let's run it again. We have Leah, Decker, King all created, regular VIP, VIP plus, sync account, jump back up, check VIP plus, none of them's VIP plus, check VIP, yes, Decker is VIP, modify account A.VIP, account B also VIP now, accounts linked, right? Jump out, no destructor triggered, right? Continue on, print out the account status. Now, Leah and Deckard are both VIP. So that got changed successfully. Continue our second example, sync account 1 and 2. 1 is Deckard, 2 is King. Get up to here. Link Deckard and King, accounts linked. The account Deckard and King both have VIP plus now. No destructors were triggered. Finally, reach end of the program, return 0. that is when destructors are triggered backward. King first, Decker second, Leah last. Any question on that? Question, why was destructor called at the end only? When we have passed by value, it was triggered in the middle. That is because when you had a copy created by pass by value, right? When you pass by value, you have copies created inside the function. Those copies are also objects, right? So when you copy account Leah, you have another object called account A. That's a copy of Leah. So when you jump out of the function, when you're at line 20, finish that function call over here, that copy will also get destroyed, right? Because the copy only exists in the scope of the function. When the function is done, the copy is done. So the destructor that we saw trigger earlier was destroying the copy. That's why there were a couple extra destructor being triggered. It's because there were a couple extra copies being created when you pass in by value. That's why. Okay, so the destructor that you were looking at were destroying the copy, versus those three are destroying those three accounts that we have, right? Mm-hmm. Any other question about that? All right, so we went over detail of friend function. Friend classes is the same, all right? So let's have another class, a very short one. I'm going to call it admin. This is my class admin. I am going to declare friend. So this is how you declare friendship of another class. So a count class is giving admin class access to everything. Okay, so you just need to do friend class, the name of the class, semicolon. That's it. Very simple. The reason I'm giving this admin access to everything I have is because I want admin to help me reset account balance and reset status to regular. Okay, so here's our very short definition of class admin. This is in admin.h file, right? This is a class admin. It has public functions, only two. One is reset balance, that takes in an account. Reset status, that takes in another account. By reference, right? We learned our lesson. We're not going to pass in by value, not going to do anything. So pass in by reference. So now if you look at the definition, this will be in admin.c++. Okay, so admin.h, admin.c++. Admin.c++, I'm going to define reset balance and reset status. And the reset balance, I can directly call account balance, set it to 0. This is only possible because admin is a friend of account. All right, similarly down here, reset status, where I can directly overwrite account status equals to regular. That is, again, because admin is a friend of account. All right. Should I create an admin class in admin.h? Yes. So this is basically admin.h, a segment. Like on the top, you have if not defined, define, include. Down here, you will have endif, right? Yeah. So admin.h, admin.c++. That's right. Now let's look at our final example, our complete main, where I have Leah, right? Where the count is have the get name, get the status, get the balance. I have Deckard, which is VIP, read the name, read the account status, read the account balance. King, VIP plus, read the name, read the status, read the balance. So by the end of 41, I will have those 3 lines printed, right? Account Leah, which is a regular, has balance 0. Account Decker, VIP, has balance 100. Account King, VIP plus, has balance 1000. Okay, so that is by the end of 41. 43, creating admin. That is my admin object. I call it admin 0. Okay, type admin, admin 0. I can reset balance of account 1 which is Deckard. Once I trigger that, Deckard should now have balance 0 instead of balance 100, right? Used to 100, now it's 0. I can also call admin 0.reset status of account 2, which is King. Now King will then have status regular, right? Reach end of the program, Destructor being triggered in the reversed order. All right. That will be all for today. We did a review of classes 1, right? Header file, interface, implementation, source file. We introduced Constructor, how you do have default parameters in Constructor. We introduced Destructor. Then we spent a lot of time looking at friend, right? We have a detailed example of friend functions and then a shorter example of friend class. And meanwhile, we also did a review of pass by reference because that's very, very important and you'll be using that everywhere. All right. That'll be all for today.